Khloe Kardashian opens up about growing up with Kris Jenner as both a mom and a manager. Khloe Kardashian recently opened up about the unique challenges and experiences of growing up under the guidance of her mother and manager, Kris Jenner. The 40-year-old reality star gave fans an intimate look into her family's complex dynamic during the latest episode of her podcast, Khloe in Wonderland. Sitting down with her mom, Khloe reflected on the early days of their rise to fame and how working with family presented its own set of hurdles. For years, the Kardashian-Jenner clan has been one of the most talked about families in the world. From the success of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, KUWTK, to the launch of multiple business empires, the family's fame has only grown with time. But behind the glitz and glamour, Khloe revealed that there were moments of tension, confusion, and emotional growth as the family navigated the complicated intersection of personal and professional relationships. Struggles with a new dynamic. Khloe admitted that adjusting to Kris Jenner's dual role as both a mother and a manager was not easy, especially in the early years of KUWTK. She explained that the shift from seeing Kris solely as mom to recognizing her as a professional manager was difficult to grasp at first. "I think our dynamic at the beginning, it was challenging," Khloe confessed. "I know more so for Kourtney and me. For you to suddenly become our manager at first, we were like, what are you talking about? You're not going to boss us around. We don't even want to do this." Khloe recalled how hesitant she and Kourtney were when Kris and Kim first floated the idea of filming a reality show. "At first when you and Kim were like, we're going to film a show and you guys have to be on it, Kourt and I were like, no we're not. We don't want to be on this show," Khloe said laughing. "You guys were like, no you're going to be on the show. And honestly we thought it was going to be a flop. We had no idea what we were getting into." Kris, known for her business savvy and relentless work ethic, was determined to make the show a success. And as the family's manager, she didn't give Khloe or Kourtney much of a choice. "But then when you were like our manager and telling us what to do and where to go, it was hard for us to differentiate mom and manager," Khloe shared. "It was hard for, I would say, the first few years. Growing pains and resentment." Khloe explained that, at first, the lines between family and business were blurry, which led to misunderstandings and tension. "There were times when I would get so annoyed with you," Khloe admitted to Kris. "I'd think, why is she talking to me like this? I'm your daughter. But then I'd have to remind myself, no, right now she's talking to me as my manager." She continued, "It was like one minute you were comforting me because I was heartbroken over a breakup, and the next minute you were telling me to be on set at 7 a.m. It was hard to adjust." Kris admitted that the transition wasn't easy for her either. "It was hard for me too," Kris shared. "Because at the end of the day you're my babies. I never wanted to hurt you or make you feel like I was treating you like an employee. But at the same time, I knew we had something special with the show, and I wanted to make sure we didn't waste the opportunity." Khloe revealed that she often felt like Kris was too focused on the business side of things. "Sometimes I felt like you cared more about the show than how we were feeling," Khloe said. "Especially in the beginning when we were still figuring out how to navigate fame." The turning point. Over time, however, Khloe began to understand Kris's perspective and saw the value in her mother's guidance. "That was my attitude towards you until I had to realize, okay, this is manager Kris. I had to put you in two different categories, mom and manager. Once I figured that out, things got a lot easier," Khloe said. Kris nodded, agreeing that the shift was gradual but necessary. "I think once you guys started seeing the success, once you realized how big the show was getting, it became easier to trust me in that role," Kris said. "But I also knew I had to adjust too. I had to remind myself sometimes to take off the manager hat and just be your mom." Khloe shared that one of the biggest turning points for her was when Kris demonstrated that she had their backs, not just as their manager but as their mother. "I remember when I was going through a really tough time, it was after my divorce from Lamar, and you were just there for me," Khloe said. "You didn't ask about the show or about work. You were just there as my mom, letting me cry and helping me pick up the pieces." Learning to separate mom and manager. Khloe admitted that it took years for her to feel truly comfortable with Kris balancing both roles. "It wasn't an overnight thing," she said. "But eventually I realized that you were doing it all for us. You weren't just trying to make money, you were trying to build something that would give us security for the rest of our lives." Kris smiled, clearly touched by Khloe's words. "I always wanted you guys to feel supported," Kris said. "It was never just about the business. It was about creating a legacy, something you could pass down to your kids one day." Khloe laughed. "Well, mission accomplished. I think we're doing okay." Kris agreed. "Yeah, you guys have done pretty well for yourselves." Khloe pointed out that working with family still comes with its challenges, but they've learned how to navigate them better. Now, if we have a disagreement, we know how to separate it, Khloe said. If you're talking to me as my manager and I don't like what you're saying, I can tell you that. But it doesn't affect our relationship as mother and daughter anymore. Kris nodded. Exactly. We've learned how to have those boundaries. It took time, but we figured it out. Reflecting on success and growth. Looking back, Khloe admitted that Kris's guidance was instrumental in shaping the family's success. At the end of the day, you knew what you were doing, Khloe said. I may not have liked it at the time, but you saw the bigger picture. Kris smiled proudly. I knew you guys had something special. I could see it before anyone else could. Khloe added that Kris's ability to navigate the business side of fame while still being emotionally available as a mother was what made her so unique. Not everyone can pull that off, Khloe said. You could have been cold and calculating like some managers, but you weren't. You always made sure we felt supported and loved. Kris wiped a tear from her eye. That means the world to me, she said softly. As the conversation wrapped up, Khloe reflected on how far they had come as a family and as business partners. I think the fact that we're still so close after all these years, that's the real success story, Khloe said. Kris smiled. I think so too. Khloe leaned over and hugged her mom. We've been through it all, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Kris hugged her back and with a smile she said, neither would I.